I call the Planning Commission meeting for January 18th, 2024 to order. We'll begin with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jackie, will you call the roll?
Mr. Haddon?
Here.
Mr. Perkovich?
Here.
Ms. Small?
Excused.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Here.
Mr. Varga?
Here.
Mr. Crocker?
Here.
Mr. Cook?
Here. Before we get started, we have a little housekeeping to take care of. We need to elect officers for the Planning Commission. With that, I'll take a nomination for the chairman.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Cook to be chairman and continuing to be our chairman.
Second.
Is there any other nominations? Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. I'll take nominations for vice chairman.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Varga for vice chairman.
Thank you.
Second.
Is there any other nominations? Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. With that, I'll take nominations for secretary.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Crocker for secretary.
Second.
Any other nominations? Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting December 7th, 2023.
So moved?
Second.
Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes, on tonight's agenda, we have two public hearings, and we'll follow this format. First, the applicant will have the opportunity to explain what they would like to do at a particular location. Second, anyone wishing to speak in favor of this proposal will be given the opportunity. Finally, anyone wishing to speak in opposition will be afforded the time to do so, or some people may just have questions, and we'll try to get those answers. And with that, we have a conditional use permit to allow off-site storage of Mentor Nissan dealership vehicles at 8001 Moving Way. Is that applicant here? Please come up, give us your name and address, and tell us a little bit about what you want to do.
Ray Snyder, address is 8001 Moving Way, Mentor, Ohio, 44060. So we are still looking to get the conditional use permit. There were some things that were added to it. So we have Fulton Sign making up the signs, 8 signs for the Mentor Nissan parking only. Striping the lot has been a little bit of a challenge with the weather. We actually tried spraying some paint on the ground and it freezes and it just kind of goes away. So we need a little bit more time with that. Tomorrow might not be the right day for it either. So, but we are working on it. We cleared out just today. I guess it would be the east wall of what we call the first building, MS1. The trucks that were there are now gone, so that's cleared out, ready to be striped. We added some of the striping already, we just haven't gotten it all done yet.
Thank you. Is there anybody wishing to speak in favor of this proposal? Anyone wishing to speak against this? This public hearing is closed. Kathy, anything from the administration?
Mr. Chairman, we just have the 10 conditions noted.
Anything from the commission members?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Varga?
this is now down to 8 spaces. Is this useful? I mean, is this a valued, I know we've been talking about this over a period of time. It just seems 8 spaces. What, is that just like one load off of a truck or something like that? Or is that what we're down to?
It's ease of entry for a car carrier to come in, grab, it's not a big car carrier that comes in, it's dropping off 10 new cars. So it's easy for them to come in, they can pinpoint 1 or 2, there's 3 cars there right now. It's a business relationship that we have with them. So it's been working well over the years, and we like it.
I'm not really questioning it.
Right.
I mean, it's just a little, I wonder, it used to be more spaces, now it's 8 spaces.
Right.
Is this really viable? That's all I'm really kind of asking about. And in that vein, the city doesn't want to come over and find 16 cars there because you've agreed to 8, but now you need 16. I mean, is that going to work? Is 8 cars going to work for you?
We've spoke with the general manager at Nissan and his used car manager, because that's what basically we're getting. We're getting the cars that are being turned in, and they're being auctioned off, and they're out of there. So they're happy with the relationship. They understand the limitations of it, and we're going with it.
Okay. I just kind of wanted to.
Sure,
talk
I
about
understand.
the feasibility. Is it still there? Does it make sense?
Right. Makes sense to us.
Is there anybody else? When you say auction off, do people come over to the lot and inspect the cars? No?
No, they're sold off to a, they're, I don't know how, I'm not in the used car market.
I can speak to it. Ray Sminchak.
Oh, hey, Ray, how you doing?
Please give us your name and address.
Ray Sminchak, Menor Nissan, 6960 Center Street, Menor 44060. So typically they're lease returns that we're not going to keep, that we park down there. So it's just frees up space for us, for the carriers to go down there, pick them up. I mean, they're typically down there anywhere from 2 days to 7 days max.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anything else? With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve with the 10 conditions.
Second.
Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Hadden?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a conditional use permit to allow a vehicle service and repair facility at 7722 and 7730 Lakeshore Boulevard. Is that applicant here? Yes, we are. Please come up, give us your name and address.
Rich Cantanzariti, Land Design Consultants, Engineers and Surveyors, 9025 Osborne Drive in Menor.
Hold on one second, Rich. It has to be, so I need a motion to remove number 2 from the table.
A motion to remove the second item?
Second.
Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Hadden?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. All right, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Elite Tire is proposing to construct and operate an automotive service facility at the corner of Lake Shore and Dawson Boulevards. The site currently contains the previously occupied Llanos Automotive Center along with an adjacent retail building located to the west. Both existing buildings will be demolished as part of this proposal. The new layout will include new curbing to control access from Lakeshore Boulevard. We also are proposing a lot line adjustment to the south, giving us more space to move about the site. In addition to the new building, site development will provide a new tree lawn along Lakeshore Boulevard. The sidewalk that's out there will remain in place. And also within the right-of-way at the corner, or I guess really the northeast corner of Lakeshore and Dawson both, we're adding about 3,000 square feet of green space that is now all pavement. We've read through the 5 conditional use permit conditions, and I guess that's all we're doing right now.
That's all we're doing right now.
Yeah. We don't have any issues with them. I'm here with the owner and the architect, and be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, is there anybody wishing to speak in favor of this proposal? We did receive a phone call from Steve Douglas, president of Menor Window, and he has no objection to it, and Richard Beck? Did you want to speak on this? Please come up, give us your name and address, and
Name's Richard Beck, 9096 Regency Woods Drive, Kirtland, Ohio. And speaking in behalf of the approval of this proposal, a couple of things. First of all, the city would be wise to get rid of that eyesore that's there now. Doesn't look good. I know I have a couple of clients there in the neighborhood that have really want this existing building to be removed. And I haven't shown them the preliminaries yet on that, but anyways, they welcome anything that would be new and much more nicer to enhance the neighborhood. I do have two clients, like I say, that are there close by, and they want to get rid of that eyesore very badly, very, very badly. I think that the owner and Rich here have done a good job in putting together at least a nice, palatable site plan to enhance that front image of the building and the grounds greatly, greatly. You do have we can do some site work on that too, right? On the front of the building?
Sure.
Yeah.
Throughout. the
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
lot.
yeah. There's going to be some nice site work in there, and that'll be what, drawings for forthcoming on that, Rich?
For the next submittal, final
There you go.
final submittal and building permit.
Yeah. So I wanted to make clarification on that you're going to get some landscaping plans, basically, yeah. So to enhance that for the board's approval, by all means, positively. Other than that, I think it's going to be a very beneficial place for the local community and the residential community to have car repair work, tires and et cetera like that. I don't know where the closest one is to this facility here, but I think it'll greatly be appreciated by you gentlemen giving it your approval.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak against this proposal? This public hearing is closed. Kathy, anything from the administration on the conditional use permit?
We have the 5 conditions noted. I will just also add that the city does receive regular emails with regard to this particular site, and also folks that are very anxious to see the buildings be demolished and go away. So just as late as last week, I got another email with regard to that. So just to echo the consensus of the city to see this improved is definitely unanimous, so.
Thank you. Anything from the commission? With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve with the 5 conditions.
Second.
Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. We have an architectural reimage of a commercial building at 7722 and 7730 Lakeshore Boulevard. I'll entertain a motion to remove that from the table.
So moved. Second.
Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. And now that this is not a reimage and a new build, I'll entertain a motion to dismiss this.
Motion to dismiss without prejudice. Excuse me.
Second.
Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. New business, preliminary site plan of a vehicle service and repair facility at 7722 and 7730 Lakeshore Boulevard. Rich, will you tell us a little bit about the site plan?
Sure. In addition to what I just said, let's see. I guess the 13 conditions, we're all in favor of all of them. The connecting drive comment may need some additional discussion tonight, but other than that, it's a 2-floor office, 1-floor service facility. We provide ample parking for the site, and we're gonna submit a landscape plan, electrical plan, plumbing, mechanical, electrical, plumbing when the time comes for the building permit. But we feel this is a good flow through the intersection on the corner there, and working with the planning department and the owner. We feel this is a nice plan for the site.
Thank you.
We'll entertain any questions.
Kathy, anything from the administration?
So let me just give a little bit more detail, because you did receive a number of plans, and I apologize, we received a couple updated drawings. So on the screen right now is an updated plan for consideration. There are two plans that were submitted as alternatives based on the comments that were made in the staff report. There's a couple things to note. The south property line was adjusted to remove that parking that was behind the dwelling, and they want to make a clear, straight line is the southern property line that will extend all the way to the eastern property line. The city is in favor of that adjustment. The dumpster has been moved, which will be more properly serviced with a straight access to Dawson. If you could move that. And I'm not sure if they address this or not, so I apologize if I'm repeating, but there is an added cut through on that median at the first, that's actually new, which we are actually in support of, so that folks don't have to travel further south on Dawson and then do a U-turn to get into the site. A couple things that we talked about internally, and I know they've been trying to address. So this issue of this possible access drive, which goes on the northwest side of the site, as Kayla's kind of highlighting here. So this came up in part because, the question came up, if somebody enters the site from Lake Shore and maybe parks in one of those 6 spaces on the east property line, and then they realize they can't get to the building entrance, and I know there's some tweaking to be done, and maybe the architect can speak to that, or the property owner. At least at right now, the floor plans that we have only show a building access on the office to the south of the building. So if somebody were to park on the lakeshore side of those 6 parking spaces, then they realize, then they realize that they can't get to the building. So unless they either add an access door facing lakeshore, that's why the thought was to add this access drive. The problem with adding this access drive is there's a couple things. We always like to show connectivity so that somebody doesn't have to go out onto Lakeshore to get back onto Dawson. That makes perfect sense. But at the same time, and maybe the engineer can address this, that part of the site was planned for detention, which is something our engineering department said they need. So if they put that access drive in there, it takes away from the detention area of the site. I've spoken with our fire chief, and he has acknowledged that any serviceability to this site in an emergency situation will be occurring on Dawson and on Lakeshore. The existing hydrant right now is on Dawson Boulevard in the existing median. So we're not talking about a remote parcel that they wouldn't have easy access to. They have 2 road frontages, which is certainly an advantage to safety services. So I guess I'd like to open that up for discussion is with regard to the access drive, comments on the building access for customers and their intent to how to use those 6 parking spaces to the northeast side of the lot.
Thank you. Anything from the commission members?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Varga?
just because we don't see an overall plan of the shop area, the cars will come in on the north side, overhead doors, and they'll drive through the building when they
Got to give us
exit?
your name and address.
My name's Chris Weaver. My home address or business address?
Either or.
7728 Little Mountain Road, Mentor, Ohio, 44060. And so the main entrance would be coming off of Dawson. And to clarify on, Kathy, what you were talking about on if someone were to pull into those 6 spots, we're thinking of redoing some of the office space and have a entrance through the patio so they could come in through there as an entrance from that side. If we can't, if we decide not to do the drive-through on the west end of the building.
Yeah, but my question had to do with the building itself. Your customers, you envision your customers coming in off of Dawson?
Correct.
And then driving straight in, and then there'd be a series of, what, 6 doors across the south
Yes.
side of the building?
So our first door, it'll be kind of like a dealership experience. You'll pull into the building. We'll have our first door is where the customer will pull in. Then there will be a double door from the office to that bay, so they can come. So if it's raining, they're not on the outside. If the car pulls in, a service advisor will at that time take over the car, and then they'll move into the office.
So everyone pulls into the same bay from the
Correct.
south side?
Correct.
So then where does the car, how does the car get distributed internally to all these 6 different bays?
So the first 2 bays are drive-through bays. So when the car leaves the first bay, a service advisor will take it to the bay that it's going to be serviced in. Now, okay, so I see where your question is. How are we getting from the front of the building if it's going into the bay on the back side?
I'm just trying to figure, I mean, I know we looked at the parking spaces and there's some questions about that. I'm just trying to figure out how you move your vehicles through the site in order to service them, you know? They all show up at the same bay and they all pull in. How do you distribute them to the other 5 bays where you'll be doing service, right?
They could go to the next door. We could take them back through the door if they need to go through those first 2 bays don't have any lifts in it. So those will be 2 bays that are free to go back and forth. There can be minor repairs done on a car in the second bay, but for the most part, that'll be open for traffic to flow through. Now, if we can have this drive-through, which I don't think that they're in favor of, but if that were there, then we would have a way to take them from the north side back to the south side.
Or,
You
yeah.
talk about the access drive, okay.
Yeah, I guess, I'm not getting the whole picture here completely, but, so customer drives in off of Dawson, they make a left turn and they drive into the first overhead door, which is next to the office area. They go in, they park the car inside, they go in, they sit, whatever. Now, just say, for the sake of conversation, but the service for that car wants to be done at the most eastern bay because of equipment or availability or whatever. How does that car get to that further bay? Does it go through the building to the north? Have to circle, does it circle around the back of the building? Does it?
Correct.
So you're saying it would go through the front, back through the associate overhead door. It would take this additional driveway that we've identified and come back into by the driveway coming in from Dawson and then turn east and then go in the door. I mean, you'd loop around just to get the car where you need it to be. You see what I'm saying?
Or if the drive's not
Is it
there,
me? Is it me?
Yeah.
It just sounds a little complicated for such a small site to be, and that's just one car, right? And you have 8:15 in the morning when you've got 3 cars delivering, you've got cars, if the car stacks up here waiting to go into the drop-off bay and somebody hasn't driven it around and now that other car is waiting, you gotta drive around. I'm not sure I see this as a real clean flow of vehicles through the site. We're talking about site now, so this is the appropriate time to talk about this.
Sure. So what we do at our current stores that we have, not here in Mentor, but when that customer drops the car off, a service advisor takes it, and we never know, if it depends on what it's getting. So, each bay doesn't have one thing that it does. Like
No,
now, if it
I understand, but say you've got 3 cars or 4 cars being worked on, the next car is going to go to the next bay if it's tires or
Sure.
brakes or something like that, right? So I understand you can do services at each one. I'm just trying to figure out when you start getting a number of cars that are being worked on and a number of cars being dropped off, that to some degree, I'm not saying it's definitely so, but it appears that some of these cars are getting in each other's way just to get to where they want to be.
Well, I mean, I don't know how you completely avoid that in any area where the building would be. If there's space on both sides, and they're coming in one way, like you have to distribute them. So I can understand what you're saying if we have to take them across Lakeshore, and then into, like, that would be a
No,
pretty
you-
cumbersome.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
That's even
So in order to avoid that, is why we designed the second bay, so they can go through and come right back if need be. So the second bay wouldn't be blocked, and they can just basically do a U-turn and come right back if they need to go on the south side of the building.
Yeah,
If they go to the north side of the building, it's a pretty straight shot. So that's our plan. I mean, that was our thought behind it.
When you say they, that's the advisor taking the car around, right? Not the
Yes.
customer?
Yeah, the customer won't
Correct.
be driving the
advisor.
car around.
And you may park the car for a while and then go get it later to service it. It doesn't have to go to bay right away, correct?
I mean, so the type of services that we do, we don't have in-depth repairs. It's usually a pretty quick service. So in the event that the customer's dropping the car off, sometimes we'll have a customer with a noon appointment, but they're working, so they'll drop it off and then come back at noon and pick it up. So that is correct. It wouldn't have to be pulled into a bay right away in some cases.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Crocker?
at other locations that you have, do you have a similar setup as to this? Drive-through bays on both sides and it goes in and around, and have you had problems with that? Have you been successful with that?
So, good question. We like the drive-through bays for utility trailers, small, so for example, if there's a landscaping company, they come in, they don't have to back around their trailer to try to get into a bay, they can drive right straight through it. So our thought was, if they come in off of Dawson, they can pull into the bay, and when they go to leave, they can just pull out on the other side. Yeah. So we find the drive-through bays very helpful, and that's primarily the reason that we set it up where the garage doors are matching like that.
Yeah, I'm trying not to debate about how you run your business. You run your business the way you want to
Sure.
run it. But it would almost seem to me a little easier if the customer just pulled in. Maybe you had a canopy or something where you could exchange the driver. The customer could go in. One of your drivers could go in, go pick up the car just as it was pulling in, and then just pull it into the appropriate bay without having to drive through and come around. And it just seems like there's a lot of extra driving around just to get the car in the right place when it just could go into any one of those 6 doors to start. Period.
Our primary focus is the customer experience,
I
and
understand.
so I'm not saying that couldn't work. That if we could have a canopy on the south, I can't remember,
I
the
don't want
south
to change
side.
the way you do business. I'm
Sure.
just trying to say, boy,
Sure.
that would eliminate having to pull the car through and back around and then go into the other. No, you're circling around. Other customers are coming in. It just seems like you're tying a knot here with some of the traffic flow.
Well,
And let me just move on.
okay.
I have 2 other things I just want to talk about. So we've moved the property line into this, I know it's B2, but it's a residential use for the property to give you more space. It seems to make sense. What is going to happen to the use of that? And I've got the impression, though I don't know the details, that this Endeavor owns that property too? Or the owner owns both properties? or
correct. Yes, we own both
so
properties.
what's going to happen to that house now that you've taken, 12 feet, 16 feet, or 12 feet out of that property? It seems to be a non-conforming residential use, even though it's B2. I understand. It's non-conforming because it doesn't even meet the code. But what's going to happen to that piece of property in the future?
In the future, we're hoping that if we continue to grow, to have a corporate office there. In the meantime, it's rented out to a tenant.
No, okay, so you would keep it as a non-conforming use. You're allowed to do that. I guess they're allowed to do that, right? And then you would but you might see this as an expansion space in the future.
Definitely.
Let me just throw something out. You're probably not even going to want to hear this, but it's just an idea. If this building, instead of facing the way it does, if it was rotated 90 degrees, clockwise, So that you could just come in and basically almost drive right into any of the bays. I mean, you could do this customer experience thing, but, and then you would be closer to that end where this house is now. And if you needed to build an addition to this building later, it would be right, the land would be adjacent to the building that you're going to expand into possibly. I know it's not a plan, I mean, I know it's not what you're presenting, but I'm looking at some of these things and I feel kind of uncomfortable with some of the way the traffic flow is, and then we have a property here that's kind of isolated, and maybe it's going to be part of the plan later and maybe it isn't. If you turn the building and pushed it kind of to the south, it would allow you to add on an office complex or an office building to the end and still have plenty of room, and you'd be able to drive straight in and drive straight out. Again, I don't want to solve it, I'm just talking it through. I have some questions, and those are some of my questions. Oh, one other thing, I'm sorry, excuse me. This is what brought my attention to this possibility. You're only 2.5 feet off the property line. I know this is all business, and but there's another building there, you're probably, I don't know the distance, but you're probably close to 10 feet or less to that other building, if you're only 2.5 feet from the property line? Do you know how far? The only I'm just bringing this up to your attention. It's not a criticism. It's just is that you're getting to the point, like there's a dumpster there that you're very close to. You're getting to the point where you're going to have to think about fire rating construction when you're that close to the property line. And additional buildings. I'm not saying it definitively. I'm just saying it looks like, you know, if you rotated the building, you wouldn't be anywhere near that property, and you'd have a lot of clearance. So, just throwing that out. I'm not saying it's a problem, but it looks to me like that's a tight squeeze, and you're close to other structures, and that building department will guide you on that. I'm not saying we resolve that now, but it's a characteristic of this plan that makes me think that there could be an issue there. That's it.
Anything else? I'm on board with Mr. Varga, too. If you turn the building, put the office in the front,
Towards Lakeshore.
towards Lakeshore, put some landscaping around the curve, you wouldn't have this drive back and forth issue. Now, you wouldn't have bay doors on both sides, but you'd be able to screen those doors a little bit more. And it seems like the site makes a little more sense that way. I mean, have you looked into that at all? Go ahead.
We looked into it extensively, and one of the reasons that we decided not to go that way is because of us not being able to get in on both sides. With the investment that we've made in the property, it's pretty tough to recuperate all of that without having at least 10 operable bays. And so that's kind of the number, and this is the best way that we've spent extensive amounts of time drawing, shuffling the building different ways, and trying to look at every possibility to make it as efficient and make so the traffic flows as feasible as possible.
So you have cars double stacked in there, lifts them front
Correct.
and back. So you're working on two cars, and you don't want to be where you drive straight in, because if this car's done and you need to get back there, you pin yourself up.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's how we came up with this plan.
Kathy, you had something?
I guess I'd like to ask Mr. Weaver to comment. He had raised the possibility of reducing the depth of the building. It could help in some ways. And I know it's at 67 feet and some inches, and he talked about going down as low as 60 feet. That could provide some greater flexibility with either turning the building and so forth, and also help with parking. Is that something he could address? And I still want to hear the comment about the 6 spaces up to the northeast, and if that's going to be restricted to employees only, or who's going to use those spaces.
What was your first question again? I'm sorry.
The building size.
Oh, yes, correct. So, yes, we are, we think that we can work with a 60-foot wide building instead of a 67 feet wide building.
Oh, no, that's all right.
The older buildings, they were, 52 to 57, but it was before all these four-wheel drive trucks with long beds were there, and you could do that. A four-wheel drive truck is approximately 28 feet long. That's working conditions. I think they're 24 feet long. But if you have your equipment in between and you have one on each side, now there's ways to offset where, okay, we can't have a four-wheel drive truck in here or a four-door truck while we have one here. There's ways to offset that, and we can manage some of that. So we think we can make 60 feet work as well if that's a necessity.
And then the parking spaces up in northeast corner?
Yeah, so we talked about that. We would probably make those employee parking only for the ones on the east end, which that's where, yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Crocker?
Kathy, when you're talking about going from 67 to 60 feet, are you also saying you'd like them to turn the building, or what's the difference, the 7 feet there? What are we trying to gain?
Well, there's still the issue of parking.
Okay,
You reduce the size of the building, you reduce the parking requirements.
okay.
It also reduces how much that south property line goes south. So the less we can do, the better.
Gotcha.
The less impact, the better. And the more the more closely they can meet the parking space requirements, the better. So if he doesn't need the 67-foot depth, that helps and adds to the site. Now, he's talking about, I guess I'll add one more thing, that access drive could help him with terms of moving some cars around. One of the things we talked about internally when we saw that access drive is this, so say you're on Dawson, and all of a sudden, there's 4 cars backed up on Dawson, and you see that lane. All of a sudden, you're cutting through that lot to get to Lakeshore, which is not something we want to see. It's, it would probably, because of the size of the width of that access drive, it would have to probably be a one-way drive. And then you got cars going the wrong way.
Right.
So while I'm not saying, like to think the best of people, I mean, we talked about that with the car wash not too far down the road. Now people use that other, with the sheets and the car wash, and people use it as a cut-through. We don't want to create that opportunity if we don't have to. So that's just something else to think about.
And I remember there was a discussion about this property. The Dunkin' Donuts tends to back up Lakeshore. And if you're sitting there on Dawson, people are going to use that.
And we don't want them to do that.
And I know if I'm driving down Lakeshore and I'm looking for this business, I'm wanting to enter this business off Lakeshore. So if you don't have the lane, now you have to get out, go back down Dawson. But if you have the lane, then you can use it. That's why I feel like turning this building makes the most sense. But
It would.
But
If,
for
you know,
your
if-
business standpoint, you're saying you can't do the quantity of business if you have your spots used up. It's a unique site, and we want you to be successful here.
Sure.
I think everybody in this room wants to see those buildings
Sure.
at the working end of a bulldozer. So we want to try to come up with the best plan and help you through this.
Yeah, at this point, we're open to, however we can make it work and still provide, exceptional service and be able to still provide, the amount of business that we think frankly is needed in that area.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Parker.
I'm just thinking, I agree with the comments. We want this to be successful. We want this to go ahead. A lot of times when I look at a site that's being developed like this, I also think about, and I don't wish this on anyone, but say you run this for 10 years and then you leave. Now, we have this building that has these characteristics that are very much associated with your business operation, but the next guy, it's going to be really hard for him to make it work like that. I'm just looking from a planning point of view, not. I would almost like to see the consideration, not necessarily as a requirement for approval, but the idea that you think about what people call a master plan that would show possibly both lots even though it might not be it right now, but both lots are developed, so we can kind of see how this whole thing works? Because that now becomes kind of a question. I know it's not a problem, it's B2. You can tear down the house, put up an office building. But how that works in conjunction with how all this works, and I still have some concerns about traffic pattern. Like, people will drive past this building coming from the west before they know they're supposed to turn down Dawson to turn in, you know, I mean, and then they'll drive in they're coming around. So I'd like to almost see some thought, not dependent on the approval, but some thought about what happens if both of these are joined together, you build your office building. How does this work as a plan? Because that's what we're here for. We're planning commission. I'd like to, you know, I'd like to see that this has a future that is going to work all the way down the way, you know. So that's just my comment.
Also, if you made your building 60 feet and you didn't go to that east property line and you moved it, could the site work? Could you still get cars around the back? How much space, Kathy, do you need on that east property line to be able to get cars? Yeah, get it more in the middle of the site. Would that work?
If we could get a variance and get
Yeah,
closer to
I'm
the.
hearing what he's saying, a variance. That's a possibility. I mean,
The only way that we could see that would work is if we were able to get a variance to be able to get a little bit closer to Lakeshore on the north end.
To move the whole building, to turn it 90 degrees,
So
and
we can
move
get-
it west?
Correct. So we can move it far enough west so that we can.
Because you need so many bay doors. You want 10 spots. You want 10 working spots.
We want it 12, but we can make 10 work.
Kathy, did you have something?
just a couple things too, and we also talked about this. I mean, we have a lot of businesses that have, in the city, that have some wayfinding signage, you know, on the road. Lowe's is a great example, you know, I think Speedway too, you know, turn on Dawson for access to Elite, you know, the blue traffic sign, you know. I think that certainly could be, you know, added as a consideration, because if you want the traffic to go into Dawson, that's what we're gonna have to do, is to provide some guidance. And like I said, we have other businesses in the city that do that. So that's an option. I guess I'd be curious with the architect here, if he has any thoughts on this, and some of the things that he's hearing. You know, I mean, he's the designer, right? So if he has any thoughts on some of the things we've brought up. I mean, we talked about this internally, about shifting the building also, but we haven't seen it, and I'm not doubting anything they're saying, but it's just, he's
Right.
just like, you want to see that option, if you could get that option of make that option available.
We should have brought sketches. We would love the building to go that way. Ideally,
The variance, though, wouldn't be through us, right?
No.
It would be through BZA.
Right. Would, you know,
What kind of variance are we looking at here? I guess
I don't
it
know yet,
determines how
yeah.
big your building's got to be and what the setback is and
And-
how far you can move that building back.
one other comment with that property line, Kathy, moving back, we probably wouldn't need as big of a variance as initially we did. Because the line was up.
Line's right there.
Yeah. But when we were measuring before, we were going.
any consideration of a variance, you're going to have to show, you know, hardship or practical difficulty, and you're going to have to minimize it as much as possible. So I'll just throw that out there as my public service announcement. So,
And the fact that there is property behind it, I know it's a house, and I know, but you know, if that's available, you know, to mitigate the variance, you know, that you actually have a space available,
exactly.
then, you know, maybe you ought to look, that's why I'm suggesting you look at
Yeah.
not having a first phase and second phase development, but considering that back property as a second phase for office, or, well, you know, that would give a lot more, I think it would give you a lot more options, to be honest. You know, that you'd have circulation on the east side and the west
It's about
side.
that. We talked about doing it for phase one and phase two, but I don't know what the timelines are.
I don't know. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
One
You got to get into the mic, though. They'll yell at me back there.
Thank you. One observation, or hearing the discussion, The orientation of the building presently is very conducive for firefighting, whereas you have two longer walls for the fire trucks to get in on each side to fight the fire. To turn the building horizontal for a consideration, you'd be hard pressed to get maybe a fire truck on the back side of that building. You would have only one long wall facing Dawson or parallel to Dawson. Here you could get fire trucks on either side, the north and the south side, to fight the fire. That's one observation that I'd like to point out, so that you could get two fire trucks in there at the same time. It'd be very difficult to turn the building and orientate it the other way to get two fire trucks in there.
Well, yeah.
Mr. Varga?
I'm just thinking, depending on how you situate this, you might be able to get all the way around the building if you turn it. Again, I'm not trying to design this, but I'm just saying, you might be able to, if you rotate it, you're gonna have plenty of room on the east and west side, and I think you could establish an aisleway on the south to be able to get around it. So I can't speak definitively to any of this, it's just speculating.
The other thing also
But-
is where would we go with the parking? Because we couldn't park on
I mean, I feel like we're having the same discussions, Kathy, as the planning group did.
Yeah.
It's the same. Rich?
Well, I guess,
Yeah.
I guess we can discuss building size first, and then see what we can come up with layout-wise to turn it. You know, not to get away from the point, I want to make sure we still bring it up. If that access drive isn't there, we can certainly utilize that area for dry detention, you know, because we do have to provide stormwater management for this site regardless. And that's really the only place for it, and that's where the outlet is. You know, although we're getting rid of quite a bit of impervious hard surface at the corner, you know, we can only build our stormwater management on our own property, so we're kind of, and there's pavement everywhere with this layout. And there's, even with another layout, it'll be the same. And just follow up with Richard's comment, the distance from the hydrant to each corner, northeast and southeast corner of the building is about 200 feet. So if we turned it, we won't know until we do it.
Right.
So,
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think that we're at the point where there's enough questions that we might want to table this and get more feedback. How's,
And you can work with Kathy and her group, and maybe after you turn it, it doesn't work. Maybe we come back with,
I'm just want to reiterate, don't discount the fact that you own that back property, and that if that's part of your second phase, think about using, you know, there's a lot of detention space there. If you end up using it later, I don't know how it works. You know, I mean, I don't know how all the moving pieces work, but what's I don't want to speak for the rest of the commission about the table.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Crocker.
would you be willing to table it and come back and work with the administration?
You know, I guess we've had it for almost a year, and we've put a lot of time, energy, and money in it, you know, to try to, you know, come up with what we have here. And we've had, you know, a lot of people who are familiar with, you know, building structures. We've met with, you know, those people, but, you know, I think if the traffic flow is the only issue, that, you know, I feel comfortable with that myself. As far as us taking care of the car once it's on our facility, we feel pretty good about that. If this is not approvable, I don't really know where we would go from there. We've got a lot of investment in the house, to tear that house down and to build on that would be you know, quite the investment. We're family owned. You know, to the gentleman's concern with once we're gone, my son's, you know, almost 2 years old. This is our livelihood. One of the things, and I don't know if this would, you know, help, but we're trying to do it free span, you know, without any posts in the middle, the way we're designing the building. So God forbid something like that happened, but it could easily be a warehouse or something to that nature with a 2-story office. It'll be a beautiful building for, that would be attractive for other uses as well. I just don't know, without the whole purpose of building, buying this property was so that we can get those couple extra feet that we needed for the parking. And that's where we didn't buy the house because we wanted to spend more money on a house. It was so we figured, well, we can rent the house, that'll cover that expense, and it'll allow this to work so that we're kind of doing, making it work. So we have put a lot of thought into it. It would be, be a gut punch, but it is what it is. We're here to.
What plan do you want? Do you want the one that has the drive-through lane on the property, or do you?
That would be the ideal plan for
ideal,
us.
that's what you want.
Because the reason for that is, like he was saying, is if we get backed up. Now, if that were the case, we could open that second bay for the sake of the traffic flow to get him off, pull both bays in, and move the cars that way. But if those 2 bays were full, then it would allow us to pull a car that needs to go on the south side. It would allow us to pull around and get to that south side. So I think the traffic flow, we could work with that as long as, the city can work with that. We would be thrilled with this layout. We have, I would say, turned over every rock and left no stones unturned. We really wanted to turn the building, north and south, and we couldn't come up with a way that it was going to work.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Crocker.
did you share some of that initial, the turning it north and south? Did you share that with the administration and go through that? I guess I just wanted to make sure I'm pulling for you. I just want to do this right. This is a big project. This is a big for you, and I want to make sure that we do it the best way we possibly can.
Sure.
But if you're saying you've done that already, you've already explored this, I was just hoping that maybe you'd shared that with the administration and already gone through this process, and that's kind of what the planning department here does. They can help you with that. So,
We've not submitted a preliminary with the administration here having it turned. We did just kind of the measurements and, with help of Mr. Beck and some other guys that are helping me with it. If we, I'm not saying that we couldn't do that.
But you've looked at it always. You want this way. You want the way you submit.
Because I believe it's the only way that'll work.
Right, you know your business model.
Yeah. And we really think this would work well for us. If we can, we're also here to work with the city. We want to be a fan of the city. We don't want to be, we're very active in the community. We love the community we're in, and, we don't want to change that.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Perkovic.
just a quick comment. If you say you can make the building work at a 60-foot depth, have you done any calculations that would say, okay, for example, that allows me to drop 1 or 2 parking spaces? Does that free up some space to help with circulation? Or is that something you would still have to look into? You said you can make it work at 60, but does that really give you enough of a benefit to make that work or not? So that's one of my first questions. And I think that if we're still sort of fighting this whole circulation and rotating building, if maybe looking into that, if it definitively might help, that might be step one.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
One
Haddon.
quick comment. I've been to your competitor, and the traffic flow I have no issues with, because I've dropped my car off, they come get it, they fix a tire. It's not an issue. I understand your model works. Have you thought of having the traffic come from the north into your building instead of from the south? Why are they coming from the back and not the front?
That was something that the commission recommended.
Okay. So you guys discussed that then?
If we did it a long time ago. I guess, we've, to be fair, we've talked about the site many times, so I don't recall specifically
It's not my idea to come from
The-
Dawson ever.
entrance coming off of Lake Shore.
Because like, I mean, everyone's going to come in off Lake Shore to get to this site. It would just make sense to pull in there, then drive through
It was
and come
not,
around.
I was
This is-
under the impression that we needed it, yeah, it was never my idea to come off of whether, I don't know when that came up, but coming off of Lake Shore is perfectly fine with us.
Well, because then you can get rid of the access drive and people can come in and just leave out the back. I mean, it makes more sense to me trying to get into this site.
It's ironic, recently, Chris talked to me about the interior door into the office, into the waiting room, and when he explained it to me, he was physically telling me that they were traveling in from the north, and then, so it was a surprise to me tonight that we're coming off of Dawson, so.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
no,
you explain, that's the way you explain it to me, from the north.
for the people who are, yeah, okay. Yeah, we have no problem coming off of Lake Shore.
Well, does administration have a issue with that?
In speaking with John, I think when that was originally brought up, it was with the old building. And so
Oh,
Yeah,
changes everything,
That-
obviously,
that's-
with the new.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Perkins.
So with that, I mean, that might be another cog that might help solve the issue, is that you might want to explore that too.
we would love that.
The other thing that I think I heard from Rich earlier was that if this access drive from north to south is not there, it benefits the site aesthetically from everyone's standpoint. You get more vegetation and so forth, but that need of the detention basin, if ultimately that drive needs to happen, that has to go somewhere, either underneath. That's an expense, so I think that needs to be weighed in too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We don't really need this.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Crocker?
I just think there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered, but I think they can be answered, and I think that we can come to, I'm sure you can come to some kind of final conclusion, resolution with the administration. I really would feel better if we tabled this and you guys worked all these details and then came back next time with a solid plan that everyone's on the same page. Does that sound like something you can work with?
Yes,
Okay.
and so it sounds to me you guys are more in favor of having the access from Lake Shore versus Dawson. And
Defer to the
Kath-
administration, yeah, definitely.
Kathy is definitely right. That was when we were with the old structure.
Kathy's
And-
always right.
Always John. John.
Okay. Yeah, well,
Mr. Chairman?
yeah, I would be more in favor of tabling it versus trying to turn the building.
Mr. Perkvic?
I was just going to say that, maybe that is part of that study that we're going to spend a month looking into, and now that that's another option, that could help answer things again. So, and I think that, first studying that width of that building, if that does anything to decrease your parking or circulation problems, all of those things need to get weighed in. Thanks.
This would work much better taking the septic
Thank you.
off the front.
So,
Motion to table.
Second.
You pick.
Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Haddon?
yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. We look forward to seeing you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a building addition, site alteration at 7310 Corporate Boulevard. That applicant here, please come up, give us your name and address, tell us a little bit about what you want to do.
Yeah, hi, my name is Brian Deming. We're at 3767 Lane Road in Perry, Ohio, is our office address. We're looking at building an addition on the back of an existing building in Menor. Part of it's going to be some manufacturing, part of it's storage with a small area of office space.
Okay. Is that all?
It's not a very exciting building.
Let's make it exciting.
Kathy, anything from the administration?
Just one item, if I ask the applicant to address, and that's the access drive that carries you from the side of the building towards the back. There was a comment made about the width of the drive being somewhat narrow than the rest of, within the 22-foot requirement, and then access to the dumpster. Is that the only place for the dumpster?
That's the place that works the best for the dumpster. Yeah, that's really the only place we're able to put it and get the parking.
Is that all?
Yeah, I spoke with the fire chief on this, and he says they can work around it. The existing width is at that corner where kind of it bends there. Yeah, right there.
The 19 feet right
It's
there?
19 feet now, so it's not at the 22, and they can access that now, so.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Varga?
can I ask the simple question? Can you, that's just a little corner inside the building. Could you move that dumpster, that wall with the dumpster on it? Could you move it back 10 feet? Give you a little more room and you wouldn't have secretaries driving into the dumpster?
It's yeah, this plan's showing the dumpster in the wrong area. Sorry, I was thinking we were talking about a totally different area.
Where is it?
So all the way in the back of the building, in the back corner of the parking lot. So yeah, we're
You got your
we're
plan?
thinking two different places.
Here we go. Now we're
Back
official
there,
here.
yes,
Here.
yes, yeah.
Well, that's
Sorry.
completely different.
Sorry, yeah, it is completely different. I was looking here, not there.
So that would maintain the 22-foot drive.
So we need an
Without a
updated
dump-
plan to show the correct location of the dumpster.
Yeah, eventually, yes. And you don't have the dumpster sticking out into the driveway.
Right,
Which would
right.
be not a good thing.
Right, no, it'll go all the way in that back corner.
Now, that would pretty much require the truck driver, the dumpster guy, well, he'd drive in, but then he'd have to back out, don't you think? Is there room, you think, for him to do three-pointed turn in that little space?
I don't know that they're gonna actually use the parking all the way in the back because there's a drive-in door back there and they need to get their box truck in there as well. So just because the parking is shown, I really don't foresee them using
So
it.
you're thinking that the dumpster would be here maybe, right?
No,
Straight in the
towards the
driveway?
north more. Back in that corner of the parking lot
Well,
there.
that's what I'm saying, though. The truck driver comes in, he goes in, front load, dumps it in the back. Now, how does he get out of there?
Well, like I said, these parking lots here on the left-hand side,
Here?
these parking spots, I don't think they're gonna end up using those because there's a overhead door in the back of the building that they,
Over here?
yeah, that they do pickups and deliveries from, and they need to get a box truck in there. So I don't think they need that parking, and I don't think they're gonna use it, but it's shown because it's required.
Well, okay, that's a good point. It's
I mean,
required.
yeah,
I
it's
mean, let's-
required.
I'd like to defer to the city. I mean, this seems simple, but now it's, they're not using it. It's, they're not gonna use those, I mean, they're gonna show spaces, but they're gonna drive the truck over those spaces. If a car is parked there, it's gonna make it awkward for both deliveries and the refuge truck to turn around. So,
Could provide a little hardship, yeah.
yeah, well.
So
when you
they're overparked. I shouldn't say that. The minimum parking requirement is 67 spaces. They have proposed 100.
Oh, okay, well, all I'm getting at
Sounds
is,
like we have enough.
don't show the parking spaces.
Yeah, if
And
we're not
use
gonna
that
use
for
them.
maneuvering,
Yeah,
for both your waste and your deliveries.
yeah.
And that'll be a different, just don't show the spaces, don't pave them, don't put stripes down, because you don't want cars in the way.
Right.
And if you're over the limit, that's fine, that's great.
Is there anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask Kayla to blow up this one section. So kind of back to where the existing aisle is only 19 feet. There's that landscape island right there. Is there any way that could be peeled back a bit? And then that'll also improve the width.
The width, yeah. No, I don't see that as being an issue.
So there will be a maintained 22-foot aisle, right, consistent, not impinged upon.
I don't know if you're physically able to quite get 22 between the corner of the building and those spaces, but it looks like you
No,
can get
I
pretty
think you do.
close.
I think if this is, yeah,
You gotta get into the mic.
I'm sorry, I can't,
Using his pointer.
yeah, I can't, yeah. Two things at once, come on. Yeah, I think it'll work. If there's nothing there, I think it'll work. It's certainly less of a problem than it is with the dumpster there. And just cut back the planter and get rid of the spaces for a maneuvering room. And
Is there anything else? You've read the conditions and you're okay with all of them?
Just need to add a condition.
Yeah. The 6 or the 7 that are there now, you're okay with all the conditions?
I was going to pull those up right now.
We're removing number 2, correct?
Well, it's actually correct.
It's actually correct, yeah.
Okay. There you go, all right.
We just recommend adjusting the landscape, the existing landscape island to maintain 22-foot wide drive access.
So I see obviously we show less masonry on the elevations that aren't seen by the street at all. I guess I was under the impression that it was 50% if it was seen from the street. 50% of it to be masonry if it was going to be seen from the street. But if it, most of the building isn't going to be seen from the street, maybe the very north side. But the rest of it should just butt up to other buildings.
Kathy, do you want to speak on that a little bit?
Well, the design guidelines read any side or rear property, any side or rear building elevations should be no more than 50% metal panel.
So you okay with the conditions then?
Yeah, I mean, it
is what it is.
it's not a deal killer. It's a nice panel. It's an insulated metal panel. It's not just like a corrugated metal siding. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Varga?
I think the intention is that you're adding to a building that's designed with a certain appearance and that you're just going to make it look the same.
right. So I think the back elevation of that building now, I would swear doesn't have more than 8 foot of masonry.
No, I don't think it does. So Kathy, did you look into that at all?
We didn't find anything specific to that. I apologize, but and to your point, what we talked about on the phone was that always intended to be an expansion wall. I don't know, but
We do that with certain buildings. When
Yeah.
they say they're going to expand, we
Right.
kind of give them a break on the mason, and then, they come back, and I was wondering, was this one of those cases?
I bet it was. Yeah.
there's no expanding at this point after.
No, after this, there's
So
no
this
more
is
room.
it.
Yeah, this is it. This is it. So, makes sense.
Okay. Is there anything else? With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Did we actually add an 8th item?
Yes.
And it is, for her sake, what was the 8th item? Okay, and then I'll suggest that I'll at the, what is it, the north? Where's it, north
It's the
or?
landscaping. We're going to peel it back.
Oh, well, no, I wanted these spaces removed.
Okay.
This one, too.
So we're going
So
to, two more conditions then.
Okay, so one condition, 8 will be the maintain the 22, well, you actually have that here. The number 2 actually does that, so maybe we can add to that, adjusting the landscaping
Landscape
item.
island.
Landscaping to permit. And, but 8, I'd like to see remove parking spaces for vehicle maneuvering. What is that the northeast or northwest corner? Yeah, I don't see a oh, here it is. No, it's the south corner.
I'll have Polaris double check it. Just on the site plan we submitted, it says that the minimum parking required is 31 spaces, and we're providing 32. So
But we're talking about the total site, right?
yeah, this might not, this just takes into account the addition. He might not have taken into account what they already have.
Correct, and
So,
and
I'll-
Kathy, you
like I said, you can
stated
double
that
check it.
they're gonna have site-wide more spaces than they need.
Based on our calculations, they've provided 32 additional spaces. I think they're adequately parked with, if they remove some of those, I'm not saying remove them all, but if they remove some of those, they certainly
No,
could.
just
yeah.
the ones in that corner.
The north,
where
the-
they-
on,
they've
on,
gotta
so
get a
that's the
truck to drive
south property line.
it. South, yeah, south. Okay, so number 8 will be remove unnecessary spaces at the south corner of the lot.
And we're good on number 2. Number 2 was a change.
And just adding just landscape island.
There we go.
Landscape island.
She's got it.
Make the motion?
Make the motion to approve with 8 conditions?
Second.
Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Kathy, you had something?
No, I'm sorry. Real quick. So, the classic reconditioning center on Tyler Boulevard, you should all be very familiar with it. You've seen it a few times. The last time it was seen was August of 2023. They were redesigning the front of the building to add a drive. They originally had taken out the drive and they decided to add it in. Now and in doing so, they were removing what we called the cone of the front of the building, and they were redesigning it. Now they have decided to change that and redesign. They want to leave the cone of the building and leave the design of the building as is. And you have to go to the separate. So that's what they proposed and was approved in 2023. There we go. Is that right?
That's right.
That's the new one?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. So, as John just indicated, the cone of the building will stay. The access drive is going to remain, but they've now curved it slightly, and they're now moving the sidewalk slightly. Because of the number of times you've seen it, and this is a minor change, I just wanted to make sure you were comfortable with it and didn't feel it needed to come back to you again. It is maintaining the building as it currently exists, which is not in violation of any code requirements. They are adding the drive, which is what we wanted to see, which is a good thing. They're just reconfiguring it and then reconfiguring the sidewalk based on keeping the building design as is. Making you aware of it and making sure you're okay with that.
I have no issue.
No issues.
That's it.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.